Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see you today. My name is Dustin Cormier, and welcome to How to Rock Astrology. First of all, no, I'm not stoned. I often get quite stoned, but I don't like to get stoned for these videos. Typically, I'm in Canada and I smoke cannabis, and it's legal here, and it's considered to be a positive sacrament if used constructively. I just have something in my eye. Literally, I've been rubbing both of them in the red, and anyway, it's frustrating, but gotta keep rolling. You can't let the stuff bother you. Gotta keep doing what you gotta do. So, welcome. Today we're doing a video talking about the Sun in Gemini with Mars in Pisces. This is an interesting combination. These two are square to each other by signs. Although they don't have a graha aspect on them technically. I would say that the true aspect of the Sun towards Mars is 120 degrees. The Sun gives aspects to things only by trines and by its opposition aspect, according to Vedic astrology. But Mars has its own special aspects where it's hitting the Sun here. Anything in the fourth house from Mars is going to have a strong aspect to it. But this works out okay because Sun and Mars are friends. Mars is a friend to the Sun. So when Mars aspects the Sun, it enlivens the Sun with a nobility that really helps to ground the Sun in its noblest purposes. And this compensates for what this helps to compensate and calm down some antagonism between the square of these essential two things. What I'm going to talk about in this video particularly is Vedic astrology stuff. I'm going to talk about how the ruler of Pisces, the ruler of the Mars placement here, of Pisces is ruled by Jupiter anciently, and it's a more primary rulership than the Western idea of Neptune ruling Pisces. This is something that I bring through my Vedic consciousness in all my videos. So Mars in Pisces is sign ruler. Of course, the dispositor of any sign channels the energies of the planets that are in that sign. So Jupiter here is channeling the agenda of Mars because Pisces is primarily ruled by Jupiter. While the Sun's primary ruler in Gemini is Mercury. And in Vedic astrology, these planets all have different interrelationships with each other. Some of them work well and some of them don't. Here, Mercury is being Jupiter's neutral to Mercury. So the Sun is whatever with this alchemy, but Jupiter is always strangled by Mercury and Venus. Jupiter only has two enemies. It's Mercury and Venus. This is because Mercury and Venus are essentially rajasic. They have an enjoyment that comes from the form of things. They enjoy the world outside of us, which is, it's okay in its own place when the proper planets are in this regard. Venus, Saturn, and Mercury do well in Gemini or in any placement essentially in the Earth and air signs, because Venus, Saturn, and Mercury all are grouped together. Have you ever noticed that Venus, Mercury, and Saturn all rule Earth and air signs, right? Mercury rules Virgo, an Earth sign, and Gemini, an air sign. Venus rules Taurus, an earth sign, and Libra, an air sign. Saturn rules Capricorn, an earth sign, and anciently Aquarius was more primarily ruled by Saturn. Saturn holds the chakra energy of Aquarius. So these three planets get along very well. And they do well in their own sign placements, but that's a those three planets enjoy the rajasic energy. They enjoy the enjoyment of interacting with things outside themselves. It's what those planets are for. And when they're placed in those places, they can do those things well. But the sun, on this side, the sun, Mars, Moon, and Jupiter all enjoy the fire and water signs. You can guess why, right? Mars rules Aries, which is fire, and Scorpio, which is water. Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is fire, and Pisces. It's more anciently primarily the ruler of Pisces than Neptune is, which is so Jupiter rules Sagittarius, which is fire, and primarily Pisces, which is water. And then the sun rules Leo and the moon rules Cancer. So the sun, moon, Jupiter, and Mars all do better when they're in fire and water signs, and Venus, Mercury, and Saturn do better in earth and air signs, because that's the signs that they rule. This, ladies and gentlemen, is the ancient wisdom of Vedic astrology. This is part of the reason why I am an ambassador for the multicultural awareness of these symbols of astrology. I'm a Western-trained person who applies traditional Vedic interpretation to Western science. I'm still a tropical astrologer, by the way. I don't go back 24 degrees like other Vedic astrologers. I use Western measurements, and I apply Vedic interpretation to those Western figures of the astrology chart. That's my thing. I try to do that with all of my videos on my here on my channel. So, ultimately, what's going on here is that the dispositor, the ruler of Mars's sign, which is Jupiter, is sucked out. It's sacrificed. It is applied indulgently to the sun, which is ruled by Mercury. Mercury being an enemy to Jupiter. So the way that this sun is set up, the way that the sun in Gemini is set up, it is going to make bad use of Mars and Pisces as sort of self-interested, self-upstanding, forthrightness, and unapologetic way of grabbing for itself, its preferences. Mars and Pisces is unapologetic and unafraid to stand up for its preferences. Because it's Jupiter, it's the self-enjoyment of the self from within. Jupiter rules, again, a fire and a water sign. It's less about the external reality and the communication with other people. Pisces is more about your internal enjoyment from within yourself. Pisces is the subtle, soft, poetic artist that we all know and love, who goes slowly towards its own enjoyment principle, and this is actually a good thing for Mars. You know, you can watch my Mars and Pisces video to see what I mean here. Pisces is actually much less mute and nebulous and quiet than the Western world paints it to be. The Western world thinks that Neptune is the primary rulership of Pisces, and therefore any planet in Pisces needs to be plied with muteness, with quietness, with this vague sense of nebulous mystery and like lack of standing up for yourself, all empathy and no standing up for yourself. And it's not true at all, especially with a planet like Mars. Mars is an internal agent. It's a warrior who stands up for what its needs are. And when Mars is in Pisces, this person stands up for their internal preference principle. Mars is the warrior, and it needs to discipline itself. So when Mars is in Pisces, Mars learns how to enjoy applying the discipline that Mars needs to apply in order to manifest any reality. Mars in Pisces is ruled by optimistic Jupiter. Pisces is. Whereas Sagittarius is the outgoing preference principle, Pisces is the incoming preference principle. Having Mars in Pisces means I know the kind of experiences that I want to have, in order to enjoy applying the discipline of the warrior. A good warrior enjoys their discipline. It's easy for them because they're warriors. They enjoy discipline and they apply themselves to their discipline. They make sure they do it in an enjoyable way. A good warrior is not a warrior who just sits and gets their head cranked by their trainer and the trainer says, work harder. And the disciple says, oh, I hate this. God, this is just the worst thing ever, but I'm a warrior and I'm going to get through it. Nah, man, that's not how a real warrior acts. A real warrior is like Goku from the Dragon Ball series, where he's not even trying. And he enjoys so deeply the disciplines and high heights that they apply themselves to. They're unapologetic about finding ways to enjoy their discipline. And to enjoy this internal preference principle, Mars manifests this with everything. And it's a great thing for Mars. Mars does well in Pisces. It's good for this reason. Now, what's happening here is that there's a square going on between the Sun and the Mars, where Mars has this internal preference principle. It's acting from its own self-interest as well as the self-interest of others around it. Mars in Pisces knows that the self in one is the self in all. So Mars in Pisces is the type of person who will say to the boss, hey, bud, we would all work a lot better if we can get some coffees on the job. So can we do that? Can you buy, if you're not going to buy us some coffees, I'll just, I'll buy the team some coffees, okay? And so, you say to the boss, we should all have some coffees because we'll enjoy that more. Because as Mars and Pisces, I enjoy, when I get a little treat at work, I enjoy it more. I feel better about it. And this leads me to the positive feeling that good things are coming through the work that I'm doing. And it guides me. It's like a carrot on a stick that guides me towards better work. And if you say that to the boss, hey, boss, you should do that for us. And the boss says, I don't know. It's going to cost a bit of money for me to do that. And I am your boss. I'm not supposed to be your friend. I'm supposed to make you guys work. You, as the Mars in Pisces, knows how the boss is. You can listen to the boss. You read them. Because Pisces is empathic in this way. And you read the boss and you think, okay, I get that, dude. Just hear me out. I'll buy the coffees for the team this first time. I got 15 people here. I'm just going to spend it out of my own pocket. Watch how much better we work. And then you go and tell all your buddies, hey, the boss allowed me to do this today. I'm doing an experiment. So here's the coffees, guys. Everybody grab your coffee. Let's see if it works. And then everybody works better. We're all enjoyable. And everyone says, it was nice, boss, that you bought us the coffee. You did it for us, and now we'll do the thing. The boss looks and says, by making everybody enjoy themselves in the job more, I got them to work harder, right? So you were right in that sense in this hypothetical thing. The Gemini, the Mars in Pisces was right to say that we all work better when we enjoy the thing, right? And this is part of the power that Mars in Pisces has. It's unapologetic about its self-preference, and therefore it can work better. It is a good place for Mars in this way. For the most part, this is the facts. And other people trust and love that you are like that your preference, by you reaching for your preference, everybody's inspired to see the strength that comes from that. And you also know other people's preferences, and you can help them. And by helping, it's like your buddy's got a broken wrist today, and you're all hammering some nails and stuff, and your buddy's got a broken wrist today. So you look at him and say, hey, buddy, I can see you're struggling here. I'm going to work hard a little bit to help you. I'm going to hammer just twice as much. But I hate sweeping. So how about if I hammer your nails for you right now? You could take it a little bit easier on your wrist, and at the end of the day, you can sweep. You're not using your wrist when you're sweeping, so then it'll be easier for you. And then I don't have to sweep. Therefore, if you enjoy hammering better than sweeping, because it's more engaged as a Gemini or whatever, then you get to do the hammering thing while he gets to do the bullcrap sweeping thing, and you helped each other. You found your preference by catering to someone else's preference, and that's the power of Mars and Pisces. The point here mainly, though, is that you are aware of what preference you have in order to work at your best. This is useful for the most part for most people. With you, what happens with you, because you're a Gemini, is that Mars in Pisces, which sets itself up to express the self-interest principle, the self-preference principle. You know how you like to work best. That's a good thing for the most part. But with this sun in Gemini, the sun in Gemini is exacerbated. This unapologetic desire for how you like to work best, because of the Mars in Pisces, you demanding to the boss, hey, I work best with a coffee. When the boss says no, nope, sorry, can't give you guys a coffee, you're going to be bitter about it. Most Mars in Pisces can find ways of schmoozing this around, and they'll just say, okay, whatever, I'll hold the frustration that I have at this, and they'll put it around. But the sun in Pisces says, what? You're not going to get us a coffee? What? You should, what? You'll express, and you'll feel bad that the boss is not catering to your preference. The Gemini here, more than any other sign, will get like flustered by this, because you would so much enjoy the ease of your thing that you'll be like, the Gemini will speak loudly to that, and people might be frustrated that you're so vocal when things don't go your way, because Mars in Pisces really wants to make things go its own way, because you know that that's how you can work best. Again, for most people, this Mars in Pisces thing is a good thing. But here, though, while on one hand, Mars in Pisces stands up for itself preference, which does ultimately help you do the Mars thing. It helps you work when you do get your preferences met. But this glimmers within a self-interest in the case of Gemini Sun. Now, Mars is the lieutenant. Mars is the general. This is what Vedic astrology tells us, is that the sun is the king, and the signature of the kingdom is the king who's ruling over the whole kingdom. Now, when the sun is in a fire or a water sign, the king is living by its internal preference, and that's the best thing. Ultimately, whatever is your internal preference for your kingdom is what you should base the kingdom on. Like Indian people, the Indian culture and nation and people have an identity as Indian people, and they work best as Indian people. Now, it's good in the international world, it's good to mix things up, but like with any relationship, you are a self, which is this, a good relationship is not two half circles making a whole circle. A good relationship is two whole individuals with whole conceived identities coming together and making the figure eight. That's how love ought to be. It's two wholes coming together to make an infinitely cycling energy whole. Two individuals bound but still whole within their individuality. So a nation also has to apply this. As a kingdom, you have to be a self and move that self and push that self and maneuver that self through other nations, other kingdoms that have other identities, while still essentially keeping your own identity. Here, the sun in Gemini is a bit of a chameleon. The sun is neutral to Mercury, which Mercury is right in the middle of the self and the other, whereas Venus is completely relating to the other. That's why partly why the sun is debilitated in Libra. The sun in Libra is looking at others. The sun in Gemini is thinking about what I am and thinking about how I can best make my nature deal with others in the best way. It has a strong sense of itself, strong sense of personality and others, and will call people out for being so individual, but they love individuality. Gemini loves that. So what happens with Gemini Sun is that the king is kind of thinking not about national identity. Like, what I was going to say is that, like, the Indian people, for example, got completely squashed by the British Empire because the British came in and imposed the British identity onto the Indian people. And if Britain was smart, they would have just traded with India as a mutual business partner instead of just taking them over. And if India was smart at that time, well, sorry, that's not the right thing to say. India was essentially forcefully removed from their preferred individual kingship. People like Gandhi was a son that allowed them to flourish. So a kingdom does best when it has an identity and it's not blending too much of that identity with the world around it. Gemini is a bit guilty of this. Gemini is, I mean, it's still very close to Aries, which means it's aware of itself. Exaltation, of course, works by proximity. You might read in your Western textbooks that the sun in Aries is exalted, and you think, oh, my sun is in Gemini, so it doesn't gain that exalted status. Too bad. Well, not necessarily. Proximity, in the Vedic sense, is about proximity. And if you're close to Aries, if the sun is close to Aries, it's close to its exaltation. Here, the sun is only a sextile away from its exaltation point. So it still has self-interest, still in the vicinity of Aries, still has self-interest. It's aware of its way of relating to the world. It has a deep awareness of itself, but it's also looking to others. It's looking to make its life easier by relating with others just enough to know how to cater to them in the best way that it can enjoy catering to them. It's Mercury. It's literally like the middle of the self and the world outside itself. What happens here with this particular combination is that Mars in Pisces is unapologetic about grabbing what it wants, demanding that it work in the way that it prefers to work. It discipline itself in the way that prefers to discipline itself. Now, the way that Gemini prefers to discipline itself is through the path of least resistance. Do you see the problem there? When you are so unapologetically grabbing for your preferred way to work, this is a good thing. I keep repeating that this is a good thing, but for Gemini's brain unconsciously, it's more about the fact that Mercury's indulgence principle for most people is not necessarily that bad. It's neutral. It's looking at the enjoyment of things, and Mercury will follow the path of least resistance because it thinks it gains energy there, and it does. It gains energy, but it also loses it at the same time. It's neutral. Because where you gain in ease and comfort and enjoyment, you lose in your ability to sacrifice for some higher attainment, to push yourself beyond your need for comfort, to push yourself beyond your limits. Gemini is kind of like, I mean, if whatever is going to give me the energy to enjoy, my enjoyment energy is where I fling myself. And you can explore. That's why Gemini goes and explores so many different ways of being, so many lifestyles, so many people, so many opinions. It enjoys the scattering towards all these different things, and it gains data about itself and about the world, and that's just how Gemini gets around. And it's a strong thing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Just like Mars in Pisces is not necessarily a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. Mars in Pisces is good. The scatterment of Gemini is not necessarily good and not necessarily bad. But the negative aspects of the scatterment of Gemini are indulged because Mars in Pisces grabs for its preference principle. The Jupiter of the Mars in Pisces is wasted on the indulgences that Sun in Gemini unconsciously enjoys so much. Now, this is good for the Sun because when Mars is in a good place, the Sun is allowed to manifest what it wants. And in everybody's chart, we're not just the Sun and Mars. This is just the Yang planets. The Sun is a Yang planet, and there's a lot of intense energy going towards this enjoyment principle. And Mars, its right-hand man, its main sword, its main exponent, is grabbing unapologetically for that Sun enjoyment in that way. Now, if your Mars and Sun aren't huge, important planets for you, if you're like a Cancer rising, then the Sun is your second house. And if you don't have, if the Sun isn't that a big, huge, that hugely important of a deal for you, then then this is not going to be that loud of a fact in your chart or in your personality, in your life or whatever. But ultimately, this grabbing for your preferences opens the door. Mars and Pisces is grabbing for preferences. It's ruled by Jupiter, optimistic employment of your method. And that method goes towards Sun and Gemini, which is indulgent, and that's okay. It's neutral for most Geminis. This Gemini in particular is not served by the Mars and Pisces in some ways. It's kind of a give and take here, because all of this is true. And the Sun and Gemini here can be a little bit too scattered. It can be a little bit like it loves just like what my brother, I'm in a band, and my brother has this combination, and he can be funny. What I'm gonna say is that Gemini expresses best through the path of least resistance, and they enjoy. That's funny. The enjoyments that they have, where they're just like, they'll smoke a cigarette and they're like, "Fuck, this is so good," and everyone can laugh because it's like, I know what you mean, Gemini. But what happens with Gemini, having Mars and Pisces, constantly applying yourself by your own internal preference principle through the already scattered Gemini mind, what happens is that this person can be politically incorrect. They can be obtuse and a little bit out of touch, even socially awkward. They're blissfully ignorant of this, or they know it, but they kind of just don't care. It's because that Mars and Pisces is just like, this is how I prefer to be. And again, that's a good thing, because that's how all of us ought to apply ourselves, is unapologetically, just allowing yourself to be yourself, applying your discipline at the way that you ought to apply it. So you gain enjoyment from this. My brother he loves the way he is. Everyone loves him in a lot of ways, although he's too much for some people. Because he's so thinking about the enjoyment, the excessive enjoyment of a conversation, he'll just get so into a conversation and he'll be performing for people. Just like almost even being awkward, being detrimental to himself in a way that's just like, it's almost self-degrading the way he comes off to himself, but also he can be critical of others. It can be very neurotic in certain ways. People enjoy it, but ultimately it can come out in ways of seeming too excessive, seeming too much of like a not caring about the social concourse of what's going on. Gemini just speaks to the moment. But even most Geminis want to come off as being like, socially cool. They can be gritty and they'll speak to elephants in the room and make things awkward. But Gemini is just like, look, okay, we've talked about it. The elephant's in the room now. Now can we stop being awkward about it? But this Mars and Pisces will look for elephants in conversation where they don't need to be even spoken to. This could be a person who, like in the extremes, my brother's not like this, but like I could see in the extremes, this is a person who's witty and kind of just whatever, kind of saying it, and they don't really mean it. But this person can be almost like racist. Like they'll just find any excuse to just say something that's a funny difference between you and I, and they'll do it in order to get their own preference again, right? But when you do things like this, when you just like arbitrarily say something like, you know what, hey, move behind me. You know what? It's like you're in the theater, in the movie theater, and a Gemini with Pisces, Mars and Pisces will say, hey, get behind me, because you know why? Because you're smaller than me. That's why. I'm bigger than you. What are you going to do about it? Or something like that. And they'll do something like that, which is just like them just almost being silly. But this silliness they'll actually apply it, and people will be like, no, you know, you're so unapologetic that the Gemini can enjoy those differences in ways that they just will, they don't care how awkward it can be, which is funny and enjoyable to them, but sometimes it is more to your detriment than you think. It would be very good for you to pay attention to the way that you come off to people, and to find a discipline for yourself. Hopefully you got a good Saturn. Hopefully you got a good Mercury, because you ought to, essentially, we can all laugh at Gemini's neurotic communication style and its need for comfort in order to express itself at its best. We can all laugh at that. We all get the Gemini way. But, all Geminis on the whole, they do need to find ways to stabilize their consistent expression. Because the sun in Gemini here, not only is it's a mutable sign, so there's some scattering going on there, but it's ruled by Mercury, which is also this, like, am I myself or am I the world outside myself? It's kind of constantly very changeable and mutable. With that being said, the sun prefers a constant stabilized expression, a constant stabilized radiant expression. And if it's got to be scattered, Gemini ultimately finds that it's got all these little ways that add up to a big production, add up to a big, having many solid channels for its expression. That's a good way to be. What this Gemini has to be careful of, hopefully, again, if you got a good Saturn, it'll be easier to do this, but because you're constantly going by, like, your preference principle because of Mars and Pisces, you can be like, I know that I would be better served to, like, go to get an education, fully fledge myself in the way of this education so that I can achieve an accomplishment and have a solid channel to express my glory through. The Mars and Pisces here is like, I don't care about that as much as my preference for how I like to express myself. And you might shoot yourself in the foot by limiting yourself because of this I don't care principle. The Jupiter sort of unapologetic, I'm going to do what I want principle of Pisces it bastardizes and exacerbates Gemini's neurotic self-interest, which sometimes everybody can get. But sometimes, because of this combination, it comes off as like people being suspicious of you, of your capacity to contribute ultimately constructively for everyone else's better good, even for your own good. You're somebody who might really be constantly making excuses as to your being indulgent and lazy and not wanting to achieve your ambitions because you wanted to go the long way around rather than just going right directly to whatever it is that you had to do in your life. Now, that's my sort of take on this combination. My tropical Vedic take, if you will. Now that I've kind of spoken to that, I think that the final thing I'd like to do is to sort of flesh out. Ultimately, this is a good combination. Don't get it twisted, because Sun in Gemini is neutral. Mars in Pisces is a good place for Mars, and that does help the Gemini stand up for itself. Whereas Gemini can be a bit of a chameleon, and sort of not want to step on people's toes and stuff like that. The Mars in Pisces adds a manipulating or like an empathic capacity to understand how people are so that it can push for what it wants and what its needs are. It can push unapologetically for its agenda, which some Geminis do have difficulty doing. This is a Mars in Pisces that says, hey, this is my agenda and everyone's going to have to deal with it. It's sort of for better or worse in that regard, in terms of one thing I will say, though, is that because Mars is in Pisces, the Sun is in the fourth sign from Mars. Gemini is the fourth sign from Mars in Pisces. So this Mars does, like I said, Mars is, in Indian Vedic astrology, we consider that each planet has its own special aspects in a different way than Western astrology. Mars, any planet that's in the fourth position from Mars at the 90 degrees away from Mars is going to be hit heavy from Mars. But this is okay for the Sun because the Sun and Mars are friends. When two planets interact with each other by an aspect and they're friends, like the whole fire and water principle we talked about, what happens is that the Mars impresses a discipline on the Sun, a nobility, where Mars is upwards looking at the best possible places for the Sun. And so there's a little bit more capacity to express discipline here. You know, despite what I was saying about my brother, he actually is in martial arts. He enjoys the pressure that his Mars puts on that Gemini Sun, which can be rather scattered. Mars in Pisces deeply desires to satisfy. It's got a deep channel of expression, and so the Gemini has to find channels to express the enjoyment of artistry that the Pisces seeks. Sometimes the Mars in Pisces desire for creative enjoyment is ruined by Gemini's scattered mind and desire to constantly keep changing things. But the Mars here, because Mars is square in the Western sense in this way, since the Sun and Mars are best friends, this aspect is actually positive. Mars gives discipline to this Gemini Sun by being in Pisces. And it helps with the ironic thing that I said of it coming off as awkward and disconnected in this way. It still at least can push itself to do the best work that it can, and to do a lot of work and to discipline itself in a lot of ways. It's just that, you know, this discipline, the gun, when that gun is aimed at other people, they can be terribly witty, uncaringly true, and unapologetically true about another person. You're frustrating me while working with you for this reason. And the other person's like, wow, you really painted it out there, right? And they can be neurotic in particular in this way, but they will go with the flow of things. They're less bothered by this than like other positions might be. So that's my take on the subject. Before we go, I always give my astronomical theory on how these planets play out. But before we go, I want to give it like an enjoyable aesthetic, sexual aesthetic as to the character of this person, to give you guys a sense of how it ultimately all plays out. And what it is that, you know, these dynamics play out in your relationships as well, where, you know, a good lover for you would be someone who enjoys how your Gemini mind is scattered and goes to this place and that place, and, you know, you're a sociable person. And you're a sociable person who is willing to stand out in the social circle for you're laughing so relentlessly at the things that you enjoy laughing at. And you will listen to other people. Mars in Pisces is good at listening to others and performing based on what those others might like. Gemini Sun can cater their performance and their crazy, zany, fun wit and charm to the person that's in front of them. They're empathic to the person in front of them. And when they do something that doesn't jive with the other person, they're sensitive to it. And they will ultimately learn the character of each person that they're trying to impress and schmooze with them to do well, because that's part of Mars and Pisces' strength. Again, the self in one is the self in all. And this is a person who knows that I work better when I'm in my own element, so I can help others be in their element to work better as well. Ultimately, in relationships, this causes you to be a social person, and you probably prefer to be social and to enjoy your lover. And your lover might not know how to be with you or handle you, because there might be some times where you express resentment at your lover not naturally being a nature that you'd prefer. you psychically maybe give off like, oh, it's too bad that you're not like me. You might psychically give that off. Or it's too bad that you don't want to listen to the way I want to approach this situation. While the other person might actually be listening, but you're like, oh yeah, that's how you want to do that? You know, like, I would really prefer if you were this way about this. And this can unnerve your partners, and your partners will feel it. And you'll eventually learn when it's appropriate, you know. Like, you might be inclined to change people to fit your mode. And they'll feel that, and sometimes they will change. Relationships, we all change a little bit to be with each other. But you might lay out a pressure on people to be sensitive to the preferred way that you prefer to be. And a good lover will compensate for that, while also not allowing you to be so much yourself that you shoot yourself in the foot in the ways that we've talked about. You know, your lover will be someone who can kind of tell you, honey, you're being a little bit politically incorrect right now. I don't think you're considering the feelings of this person. When you make this big joke about this type of thing, you're not thinking about the fact that Janie here is like a Scientologist or something, you know. It's like the Gemini with the Mars and Pisces will speak, because I need to be free to, the Mars and Pisces needs to be free to speak of whatever it enjoys talking about. And so what if I feel like going on a tirade or a rant about Scientologists for their whatever, you know, they're different from me, they're crazy in this way. A good lover will say, honey, I don't know if you realize, but Steve's mother is a Scientologist, and you're kind of causing some tension here. That's more bad than good. A good lover will help you deal with that kind of thing. So, let's see how this works itself out. This Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega, talking about the Sun in Gemini with Mars and Pisces. What does that Mars and Pisces add sexually, psychochemically to the ego of Gemini Sun? What we read is that you possess an elusive, ethereal quality that sets you apart from other people who have the Sun in Gemini. You have a sensitivity there. The Mars knows that it gets what it wants by listening to others and applying itself to the preferences of those others. Even in the bedroom, you're something of an enigma. On one hand, you're a sensitive, alluring lover, capable of extraordinary tenderness. On the other, your sexual approach is so rational that it almost seems calculated. It's a funny square there. You probably are frustrated by your desire to stand at an arm's length from the lovemaking and try to apply like interest and intrigue. This is a good combination of like a Kama Sutra person. Somebody who applies themselves discipline-wise to the art of making love. Gemini enjoys the different postures, the different angles, the different lighting, the different smells, and all of the extraneous accoutrement of the lovemaking. And this is part of the rational thing of Gemini, applying all these different varieties to the preference principle of Mars and Pisces, the sensuality of Mars and Pisces. Either way, you thrive in an atmosphere of fun and creativity, and you enjoy trying new exotic things so long as they're not crude or vulgar. Gemini likes to be fun and crazy and crude and vulgar, really, in conversation, but they're actually super sensitive, and it's driven by an air sign principle, which doesn't like too much crudeness or vulgarity. And Mars and Pisces would be the same way, too. Although you can probably be kinky in some ways, there's a capacity for that. It just, you know, depends on what crude means to you or whatever. A master storyteller. You are turned on by a lover with a fantasy life that equals your own. And to a great extent, the intensity of your sex drive depends on your vibrant imagination. When your intellect is stimulated by erotic sexual banter with your mate, your physical body quickly follows suit. Very juicy. It's a cool way that this book describes these things sometimes. So, this video has been going on way too long, so I'm going to shut it down now. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is a the last of my series of the Sun and Mars signs. Hope you guys have been watching with me and hanging out and enjoying it. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. Let me know if you enjoyed. Feel free to like it if you dig my style. Let me know in the comments if this really worked out for you. And if you do enjoy my style, feel free to subscribe as well, because I've always got lots more videos coming out in the world of How to Rock Astrology. Thanks a lot for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys on the next one.